Nora hadn't planned to leave that day. But sometimes courage doesn't knock, it kicks the door in. The courthouse was colder than she expected. The judge had said something final. Her ex-husband smiled like he'd won. Nora didn't say a word. She only held her son tighter. Liam was just under 2, soft curls, cheeks pink from the wind outside. He didn't know that their world had shifted on its axis. He only knew his mother's arms were shaking. Nora had $67 in her wallet, a dead phone, and a crumpled list of shelters she couldn't bring herself to call. Shame clung to her like the rain did, steady, bitter, and unavoidable. The cab driver didn't ask questions. He dropped her in front of the lone building she could afford, a half-dead motel on the edge of the highway. A faded sign blinked, buzzing like a fly in a bottle. Shoreline Lodge. Room 9 smelled of mold and years-old cigarette smoke. The heater worked when it wanted to. The bed creaked every time she shifted. The thin blanket couldn't keep out the cold, but it had a door that locked. For now, that was enough. Nora set Liam down on the bed and wiped rainwater from his tiny shoes. Her fingers were numb. Her heart felt worse. She didn't cry, not until after Liam fell asleep. Then she sat with her back to the wall, the shared one between her room and room 10, and let herself feel every second of the last 5 years, every time she stayed silent to keep peace, every time she apologized for things she didn't do. A soft knock broke through the silence. 3 taps, light, deliberate. Nora froze. She held her breath. Maybe she imagined it. The heater groaned. Liam shifted, snored softly. A minute passed. She lifted her hand and, without thinking, tapped back. 3 times. Nothing followed. The next day was worse. Liam was fussy. She had no formula left. She tried feeding him watered-down oatmeal from the vending machine packets, but he cried and cried. She walked him in circles, whispering lullabies with a cracked voice. She didn't know if she could survive 3 more days. That night, after the baby finally slept, she leaned against the same wall. She waited. 3 knocks. Again, she tapped back. And this time, she whispered, "I don't know who you are, but thank you." In the morning, there was a folded note under her door. "If you need help, knock again." 10. Her fingers trembled. She looked toward room 10. The curtain was closed. No sound. No sign of life. She almost crumpled the note, but instead, she slid it into her bag. Liam's fever came fast. One moment he was whimpering, the next he was burning up. Nora panicked. No meds. No stores open nearby. The front office was locked. The manager wouldn't answer the bell. She held him close, whispering, "Please, baby, stay with me." As her own tears soaked into his hair, and then she remembered. She rushed to the wall, placed her palm flat against it. 3 knocks. Sharp, desperate, and then she waited. 10 minutes. Nothing. 15. A soft rustle at the door. She opened it. A small bag of baby fever medicine. Formula. A warm, unopened water bottle. No note, no voice. Just mercy. Nora sat on the bed, clutching the medicine, shaking. Liam's fever broke hours later. Nora didn't sleep. She watched the wall. She didn't know who he was. She only knew the wall was no longer just plaster and paint. It was a lifeline. 2 days later, she saw him outside by the vending machines, early morning. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, a dark jacket, coffee in one hand, a quiet air. He looked up, nodded, didn't speak. Neither did she, but they both paused. His eyes flicked briefly to her son, bundled in her arms. He smiled soft, not forced. "He okay?" he asked. Nora swallowed. "Better now." He nodded once. "Good." Then he left. Just like that. Nora stared after him, wondering how someone who said so little could have done so much. That night, she left a note under his door. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." When she returned from the laundry room the next morning, She found one waiting on her mat. You already did, you answered. Nora had lived most of her life without asking for help. She was taught it was weak, even dangerous. That night she knocked on a wall, and someone knocked back something cracked open. The next few days passed like a blur of quiet routines and cautious gratitude. Each morning, David left early, returning with quiet footsteps and small kindnesses. Sometimes, a fresh fruit cup would appear by her door. Once, a pack of diapers. He never knocked, never lingered. Nora never saw him enter or leave, only heard his movement behind the thin wall, shuffling papers, pouring water, the hum of soft music now and then. She left notes, sometimes small things. Liam smiled for the first time since we left the house. Thank you for the fruit. He loved the mango. The heater stopped working again. The next night, a space heater sat by her door, with a post-it. Just plug it in. It'll do. Liam grew stronger, and Nora, though still wary of hope, began to exhale again. One afternoon, she found a book tucked under the edge of her door. No note, just a paperback worn, with underlined passages and a faint scent of cinnamon. Inside the front cover, written in clean, block letters, "This helped me when nothing else could. Maybe it helps you, too." Nora sat with it that night as Liam slept, beside her. She didn't even notice she was crying until her fingers smudged the ink. The next time she wrote, it was more than thanks. He never hit me. He didn't have to. I was a guest in my own life, smiling when told, quiet when expected. I forgot what my laugh sounded like. She folded the note and slid it under David's door, without letting herself hesitate. There was no reply for 2 days. When it finally came, it was one sentence. My sister died because I was too late. Nora sat on the motel bed, her breath caught in her throat. They never signed their names, never exchanged personal details. But they spoke more honestly than most lovers did in a lifetime. The motel wall, once a boundary, had become a confessional. It was during a late March storm that something changed. The motel lost power around midnight. The wind howled like it was searching for broken places to crawl into. Nora lit a stubby emergency candle and placed it on the windowsill. Then, instinctively, she set it down beside the shared wall, and moments later, from beneath the gap between floor and drywall, another candle flickered to life. 2 flames, separated by inches and fate. Nora whispered, "You're there," even though she knew he couldn't hear, but somehow, she knew he felt it. The next morning, Nora ventured outside, for air. Liam was bundled against her chest, snuggled under a too-thin blanket. David was sitting under a tree in the courtyard, reading. Their eyes met. She nodded. He smiled. It was the first time they'd seen each other in daylight. "Storm hit hard," she said, her voice hesitant. "Yeah," he replied, closing the book. "Thanks for the candle?" He looked up, really looked, and nodded slowly. "Thank you for lighting yours first." Liam stirred in her arms. David reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small plush animal in blue, clearly well-loved. "My niece had a bear just like this," he said. "Figured your son might like it." Nora hesitated, then took it gently. Liam reached for it, cooing. "He already does." David stood then, brushing snow from his jeans. "I'm not good at being around people. I'm not good at trusting them," she replied. They both smiled, small and unsure. Later that week, Nora slipped another note under his door. "You said your sister died. Can I ask how?" She didn't expect a reply, but it came. "I was working too much. She was moving with her daughter across state. Asked me to help. I said next week. She never made it. Car accident." Below it, a second line. "Her name was Mila, her daughter was June. They were my only family." Nora pressed her hand to the paper. She understood now. The silence, the guilt, the endless kindness. He wasn't rescuing her. He was trying to rewrite a past he couldn't undo. The Snow thawed by April, one afternoon. David knocked on her door for the first time. She opened it slowly, Liam on her hip. He held out 2 coffee cups. I don't know if you drink it, but it felt like a good day for sharing something warm. Nora took it. Thank you. They sat on the motel steps. Liam played with pebbles between them. I've been here for 5 months, David said. Meant to stay 1 night. I've been here 12 days, Nora replied. Meant to stay 3. David looked at her. You've stayed longer in my mind. She didn't flinch. For the first time, something in her didn't run. When she returned to her room that night, she stared at the wall. No knocks came, but they weren't needed anymore. Some walls fall without a sound. When David handed her the folded map, Nora didn't know what to say. He'd drawn a shaky red circle, about 45 minutes out of town. My sister's lake cabin, he said, voice soft like he was talking to a memory. I haven't been back since, but I think she'd want someone there again. Someone like you. Nora stared at the paper in her hand, her heart stuttering. I don't need saving, she said. I know, he replied. You're the one who knocks back, remember? They didn't leave right away. Not because they weren't ready, but because something fragile and real had started to form between them, something that didn't need rushing. David helped fix Nora's car. She helped him repaint the motel's rusted old bench. Liam took his first steps in the parking lot, toddling toward David like he'd always belonged to him. For the first time in a long while, Nora laughed, and she didn't feel guilty for it. The day they left, the motel owner didn't even notice. Room 9 and room 10 emptied quietly. They drove in silence for a while, Nora in her car, David following in his truck. At the cabin, the lake shimmered like silver silk under the April sun. The air smelled like pine, like rain, like something unfinished waiting to begin again. The house was small, but warm. David stood in the doorway, hesitant. You sure? He asked. Nora didn't speak. She walked past him into the living room and opened the windows. Liam giggled as the breeze rushed in. Yes, she finally whispered. I'm sure. Days passed, then weeks. The cabin settled around them like a second skin. They lived simply. Mornings were coffee and birdsong. Afternoons were planting wildflowers behind the porch. Evenings were shared meals, Liam's laughter, and the soft scrape of forks on mismatched plates. Nora started writing again. David repaired the old boathouse. Sometimes they sat beside each other without speaking, sharing a silence that didn't feel empty anymore. One night, as Liam slept and fireflies blinked outside the cabin windows, David stepped onto the porch with 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one, sat beside her, and stared out at the lake. I used to think grief was a locked door, he said. But it's more like a room. You live in it, until you figure out how to open the window. Nora looked at him, and love. He glanced down. I think it's the light that finds you when you're not looking. They didn't touch, but their hands rested close enough for the wind to blur the space between. A week later, Nora found a wooden box in the attic. Inside was a journal Milla's handwriting filled every page. She brought it to David. He didn't cry, but his shoulders trembled as he read it, page by page, on the porch for hours. When he finally looked up, the sun was setting. She would have loved you, he said. Nora's throat tightened. I'm glad you found me, she whispered. You found me, he corrected. Then he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. That summer, Liam started calling him Davy. It stuck, and one morning in July, Nora found a small paper heart taped to the fridge. Liam's tiny crayon handwriting. Me plus Mama plus Davy equals home. Nora cried in the kitchen that day. Happy tears. Healing tears. David hugged her from behind and kissed the top of her head. They never made a grand declaration. They didn't need to. Every sunrise shared. Every meal prepared. Every quiet walk around the lake whispered the same thing, louder than words ever could. You are no longer alone. Months later, as golden leaves painted the trees, David stood in the field out back with Liam on his shoulders. Nora watched them from the porch, her arms wrapped in a knit blanket, heartful. When David looked at her, he smiled. "Come here," he said. She walked to him slowly. He took her hand, placed something small in her palm, a simple ring, nothing flashy, just honest. "This isn't a rescue," he said. "This is a beginning, if you want it." Nora looked at him, then at Liam's beaming face. "I do," she said, "and on that lake, surrounded by breath, wind, and memory." Nora gave her heart not to a man who saved her, but to one who saw her and knocked back.